Could a frozen island in the Arctic bring down the world's most powerful military alliance?
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Commute Commentary, where we look past the narrative to cut through regional bias. Today, we are diving into the sharp divide between American transactional strategy and European sovereign integrity.
Yeah, it's an incredibly dense topic we're unpacking today.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if you're listening to this on your way to work, you might be wondering how the 2026 NATO Summit, which is happening right now in Ankara, Turkey, actually affects your daily life.
Right, because on the surface, it just sounds like a bunch of diplomats sitting in a room.
Exactly. But, based on the massive stack of geopolitical analysis, the research papers, and the on-the-ground reports we've gathered for this deep dive, the tension in Ankara it's not just diplomatic theater.
No, not at all.
It's a fundamental renegotiation of global security.
And we're going to, guide you through this massive stack of sources today to figure out exactly what is going on behind those closed doors.
Yeah, because it's complicated. It really is. We are looking at a real-time collision of worldviews here. On one side, Washington is pushing this heavily security-driven, highly transactional strategy.
Right.
But on the other side, European nations are just digging their heels in to defend territorial sovereignty at all costs. And to get to the bottom of this, we really have to start with, honestly, the most bizarre flashpoint of the whole summit.
Yeah.
We need to talk about Greenland.
Yes. The Greenland situation, which is wild. According to the summit reports in our research stack, U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a rather unprecedented ultimatum.
Unprecedented is putting it mildly.
Right, demanding that the United States basically take administrative and territorial control of Greenland from Denmark.
Wait, just take it.
Yeah, and the logic being presented from the U.S. perspective is rooted entirely in immediate security vulnerabilities. Like, reports indicate the president claims Greenland is essentially surrounded by Chinese and Russian naval assets right now.
Yeah. Right. And the U.S. argument actually goes even further. The American stance is that Denmark simply doesn't spend enough money to properly protect an island of that sheer strategic magnitude.
Which is a huge point of contention.
It is. Furthermore, the U.S. president is using a very specific historical framing to justify this demand. Our sources note he claims the United States effectively took control of Greenland during World War II, when Hitler's forces overran Denmark in a single day.
Yeah, the history there is...
It's intense. The argument is that America stepped in, protected the flank, and then, using his explicit phrasing from the reports, stupidly, gave it back to Denmark.
Which really brings us to the core mechanism of this U.S. perspective. If a strategic asset is underdefended by its current owner, and a larger power has the capital and the military capacity to secure it, then that asset should just be acquired.
Basically a hostile takeover for security reasons.
Exactly. And to understand why Greenland is the target, we have to look at the underlying geography. Over 80% of Greenland sits above the Arctic Circle.
It's freezing up there.
It is, but because of the curvature of the Earth, right? The shortest flight path for a ballistic missile from certain adversaries to North America
Oh, I see where this is going.
is straight over the North Pole.
So it's essentially the roof of the continent.
Is the roof.
Uh-huh.
Greenland houses these highly advanced early warning radar systems. If those radars are compromised, the North American defense grid is just completely blinded.
Wow.
So through that American strategic lens, demanding control of the island is a cold, purely pragmatic calculus to secure a vulnerable flank.
Okay, I want to try and translate this into something we can all picture. Let's say you live in a quiet neighborhood, right? And you have a backyard shed.
Okay, a shed.
Yeah. And your neighbor, who has a massive state-of-the-art security system, comes over and demands to buy your shed.
And you obviously say no.
Right, you tell them no. But they argue, look, there are shady characters walking down the alley behind your property, your padlock is flimsy, and you aren't spending nearly enough on your own security cameras. For the safety of the entire strait, I have to take control of this shed.
Okay, I see what you're doing.
From the neighbor's perspective, it's a perfectly logical security upgrade. But from your perspective, it's a completely out-of-line land grab. How does a military alliance even function when one member wants to force the acquisition of another's territory?
I get where you're going with the shed metaphor, but we need to push past it a little bit because it really oversimplifies the European perspective.
Fair enough.
To the Europeans, this isn't a shed. Imagine your neighbor is demanding the soil under the shed, which also happens to be the land where your grandfather is buried.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the land your family has inhabited for centuries. For European nations, this isn't some real estate transaction or a quick security upgrade. They view this exclusively through the inviolable lens of international law.
Which explains the absolute brick wall of a response from Europe. Like the reports we're looking at show Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen publicly rejecting the demand with zero ambiguity.
Oh yeah, she did not hold back.
She stated that Greenland is, quote, not for sale and belongs to its people. She even went so far as to assert that any attack on Greenland is an attack on NATO itself, and Denmark is ready to defend every inch of its sovereign territory.
And look, she has the institutional backing of the whole continent. The European Union and Iceland's prime minister have firmly backed Denmark's sovereign integrity here.
Right.
For them, you can't just acquire a piece of a sovereign nation just because you have a larger defense budget. Doing that dismantles the entire legal foundation of how post-World War II Europe was constructed. It's about ancestral sovereignty, not property management.
But the strategy analysts in our sources make a really crucial point. Washington's frustration over Greenland, it didn't just happen in a vacuum.
No, it's part of a much bigger picture.
Right. It's actually a symptom of a much deeper grievance regarding burden sharing and loyalty. To really understand the friction over Greenland, we have to look at how the United States uses its security umbrella in one region as leverage to demand compliance in another.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the Middle East, specifically Iran.
Yeah, the timeline of events in our notes makes this connection very clear. Over the past few days, we saw the total collapse of the fragile ceasefire agreement with Iran.
It just completely fell apart.
It did. And the catalyst was a series of Iranian attacks on 3 commercial tankers operating in the Strait of Hormuz.
Actually, let's pause and explain the mechanics of the Strait of Hormuz for the listener because it's vital.
Sure.
It's this extremely narrow physical bottleneck in the ocean. About a fifth of the world's total oil consumption passes through that specific strait every single day.
Every day. It's massive.
So when commercial tankers are attacked there, it doesn't just disrupt local shipping, it completely chokes the global energy supply chain.
Precisely. And following those tanker attacks, reports show President Trump declared the Iran ceasefire agreement over and publicly dismissed it as a waste of time.
Wow.
And the U.S. retaliation was overwhelming. Washington authorized military strikes on Iranian bases and immediately revoked waivers for Iranian oil sales.
And the ripple effect of that decision was instantaneous. I mean, global oil prices jumped 6% almost overnight.
Yep.
But I want to unpack the how here. Like, how does revoking a piece of paper, just an oil waiver, cause the entire global market to spike 6%?
Well, it comes down to the mechanics of secondary sanctions. When the U.S. revokes those waivers, they aren't just telling American companies to stop buying Iranian oil.
Right, because American companies already weren't buying it.
Exactly. They're telling every nation, every bank, and every shipping company on Earth, if you do business with Iran, you will be completely cut off from the United States financial system.
That is massive leverage.
It forces a global embargo. So the market panics, right? Because a massive chunk of the global oil supply is suddenly untouchable. And all the buyers rush to secure oil from elsewhere, which drives the price up instantly.
Which means when you, the listener, go to the gas station or buy groceries that are transported by diesel trucks, you're feeling the direct economic impact of this summit.
You really are.
But this is where the massive rift within the alliance tears open. The U.S. president has expressed intense frustration that European allies completely refused to assist the United States during this whole Iran crisis.
We have to look at the logic of the American grievance here. The United States provides the overwhelming bulk of the military deterrence for the Western world.
Right.
From Washington's vantage point, they are subsidizing global security. So when a crisis erupts in the Middle East that threatens global shipping, and the U.S. asks its allies to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, the allies balked.
But look at the analysis from the European side of the table, though. Geopolitical experts note that European leaders felt they were being dragged into a highly volatile, deeply unpopular conflict.
Right.
And crucially, they were never consulted before the U.S. took action. To them, Washington just acted unilaterally, sparked a crisis, and then demanded Europe help clean it up.
That's exactly how they saw it.
Furthermore, that 6% jump in oil prices hurts European economies much more acutely than the U.S., since Europe is just far more dependent on energy imports.
And you can physically see alliance leadership trying to stitch this wound closed at the summit. I mean, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stepped up and publicly defended the U.S. strikes on Iran, calling them absolutely necessary.
Which is a strong statement.
It is. Political analysts in our stack view this as a direct, very calculated attempt to appease Washington.
And appeasement is critical right now because the U.S. is pushing an incredibly heavy demand. They want allies to drastically increase their defense spending to 5% of their GDP by 2035.
5%?
5%. I have to challenge the logic of this demand. 5% of a nation's gross domestic product is an astronomical figure.
That's massive.
For European economies that are already grappling with inflation and demographic crises, hitting that target means ripping billions of euros away from infrastructure, education, and domestic healthcare.
Yeah.
It fundamentally feels like the United States is treating international security like a subscription service. It's like Washington is saying, your premium hasn't been paid in full, so we are turning off your alliance benefits.
Well, let's push back on that framing because it ignores the economic reality the U.S. is reacting to. If we dive into the economic data in our sources, you can see why Washington feels justified.
Okay, how so?
It isn't a subscription service to them, it's an overdue bill. For decades, the American taxpayer has functionally underwritten the defense of Europe.
Right.
The U.S. argues that it has been running a massive deficit, pouring its wealth into military deterrence, while European nations have enjoyed the luxury of spending their money on robust domestic social programs.
Which the U.S. doesn't have.
Exactly. If you're an American citizen, the question is, why should your tax dollars secure Germany's borders so that Germany can afford to provide universal health care to its citizens when you don't have it yourself?
That is a harsh but, very grounded way to look at the transactional mechanics at play here. Europe sees it as a values-based pact where an attack on one is an attack on all.
Yes.
But Washington sees a ledger that has been unbalanced for 75 years. And the rhetoric surrounding this divide, particularly regarding Iran, has reached an absolute boiling point.
Oh, definitely.
We've seen President Trump use highly aggressive descriptions of Iranian leaders at this summit. Reports show him referring to them as scum, cuckoo, sick, and vicious people who would use a nuclear weapon.
That is their specific perspective. We do not endorse or validate that stance, but it shows how polarized the conversation has become.
It is deeply polarized. And, well, if Europe is essentially being dressed down for not paying the quote-unquote premium or not showing immediate loyalty regarding Iran, our sources point to a glaring counterexample at this summit.
Right, there's always an exception.
Exactly. There is one nation being heavily rewarded for playing ball with this new transactional strategy, and that is the host nation itself, Turkey.
Yeah, the dynamic between President Trump and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara it's fascinating to observe.
It really is.
While traditional European allies are facing ultimatums over Greenland and these crazy GDP targets, reports indicate Trump and Erdogan share an incredibly warm rapport.
Very warm.
And that personal rapport is yielding massive, immediate geopolitical rewards for Turkey.
The biggest reward being the announcement that Trump intends to lift the CAATSA sanctions on Turkey. And before we go further, we really need to explain what CAATSA actually is because it's crucial to understanding this pivot.
Yeah, so CAATSA stands for the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. Mechanically, it's a U.S. federal law designed to punish any country that makes significant purchases of military hardware from Russia, Iran, or North Korea.
Okay.
If a nation buys, say, a Russian missile system, CAATSA is the financial weapon the U.S. uses to isolate them from American financial networks and defense contracts.
And that is exactly what happened to Turkey. Even though Turkey is a NATO member, they decided to purchase the highly advanced S-400 missile defense system from Russia.
Which was a huge deal at the time.
Huge deal. Because of that purchase, CAATSA was triggered and Turkey was aggressively kicked out of the American F-35 stealth fighter jet program.
Yep.
But now, in a stunning reversal at this summit, Trump is considering selling those advanced F-35s back to Turkey. In fact, Erdogan stated on the record that he was actually promised 5 jets.
Which, if we evaluate this through the lens of Washington's current transactional strategy, it makes total sense. President Trump has repeatedly praised Turkey as a loyal partner and commended Erdogan as a strong leader. Turkey is hosting the summit, they're showing bilateral loyalty to the U.S. president, and therefore they are receiving the benefits of that relationship. Past friction over Russian weapons is just being set aside in favor of immediate utility.
But the security analysts in our stack are waving massive red flags about this F-35 sale. The pushback is fierce. Reports show Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is strongly opposing the sale.
Very strongly.
He warned that handing Turkey that level of air superiority will trigger regional aggression in the Middle East. And it isn't just international opposition. U.S. lawmakers are terrified of the underlying security risks.
And we really need to explain the why behind that terror. It all comes down to how these specific military technologies interact.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So the F-35 is a fifth-generation stealth fighter. But stealth doesn't mean it has a Harry Potter invisibility cloak.
Right, you can't just literally not see it.
Exactly. It means its shape and its materials drastically reduce its radar cross-section. So to a standard radar screen, it looks like a bird.
Right, it relies on highly classified digital signatures to stay hidden.
Exactly. Now, the Russian S-400 system, which, remember, Turkey currently operates, is quite literally designed to track and destroy advanced stealth fighters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It uses incredibly complex algorithms to hunt for microscopic anomalies in the airspace. So, U.S. lawmakers feel that if Turkey operates American F-35 and Russian S-400s simultaneously on the exact same network, the Russian radar system will observe the F-35s flying every single day in peacetime.
So it's basically taking notes on the plane.
Exactly. Over time, the S-400's algorithms will quote-unquote learn the specific digital signature of the F-35, effectively mapping out its entire stealth profile.
Which means the United States' trillion-dollar stealth jet would be entirely compromised. Russian technicians, or even the system's own data-gathering backdoors, could figure out exactly how to shoot it down. It is a catastrophic counterintelligence risk.
It is. But in a purely transactional model, those long-term systemic intelligence risks take a backseat to immediate loyalty.
Right.
Turkey demonstrated value to the administration today, so they get the jets today. And to see the absolute inverse of this, we only have to look at how Spain is being treated in the reports coming out of Ankara.
Oh man, Spain is experiencing the harsh flip side of the transactional coin. President Trump unleashed a barrage of furious comments regarding the Spanish government.
Yeah, he did.
He explicitly called the NATO ally a terrible partner and a wasted cause. He even went so far as to demand that his Treasury Secretary completely cut off all trade business with Spain.
That is their specific perspective. We do not endorse or validate that stance, but it shows how polarized the conversation has become.
It is staggering when you map it all out. The polarization we usually see directed at external adversaries is now happening internally, ally to ally.
Let's pull all these threads together, because when we objectively synthesize the documents we've reviewed today, we are witnessing a fundamental shift in the operational mechanics of global security. For the United States, foreign relationships are currently being evaluated on a strict ledger of immediate bilateral utility. You reward Turkey for hosting the summit and demonstrating personal alignment.
Right.
You punish Spain with threats of trade embargoes for failing to meet financial targets. And you demand the acquisition of Greenland because it fulfills an urgent strategic vulnerability completely, regardless of Danish territorial claims.
It fundamentally changes the currency of the alliance from shared values to immediate deliverables. It's entirely about what can you do for my security today?
But for traditional European members, this transactional approach is deeply destabilizing. It threatens the collective ideology that built the alliance 75 years ago.
Yeah.
The European perspective argues that international law and territorial sovereignty must be inviolable. They argue that an attack on one is an attack on all is an absolute principle.
Regardless of the balance sheet.
Exactly, regardless of whether a member state's trade balance is in a deficit or whether they chose to join an out-of-area military strike in the Middle East.
Both of these perspectives, the demand for equitable burden sharing and the defense of sovereign integrity, are incredibly rigid.
Very rigid.
The U.S. feels like it has been taken advantage of for decades, and Europe feels like it's being bullied, undermined, and treated like a vassal state rather than an equal partner.
And that leaves us with a critical, very open-ended question to ponder as we watch the remaining days of this summit unfold.
What's that?
As military alliances are forced to adapt to the realities of the 21st century, can a purely transactional model successfully replace a collective ideology? Or does treating global security like a bilateral balance sheet inherently erode the safety of the entire globe?
And that wraps up our discussion for today. Browse our show for more global insights, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next shift. See you next time on the Commute Commentary.